Okay. Hi. Welcome to Grandma's Wealth Wisdom with me, Amanda Neely. Glad that you're here with us today. And joining us is Melissa Leon. I'm going to add her here to the conversation. Welcome. Can you hear me? We're going to let her get settled for a second and I'll say hi to everyone. So glad that you're joining us today. I'm going to make sure that I can be heard. And Brandon, my assistant, should be giving me that thumbs up. Melissa, you're live and joining us and can hear everything okay?
I just started hearing you just 2
Okay.
seconds ago. I'm just trying to make sure
Okay.
everything is plugged in here.
Great.
Switch software and nothing knows how to behave.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you're settling in, I'll welcome anybody who's catching the replay. Thanks for joining us. And with my guest, Melissa, is it Leon? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Leon. Yeah.
Leon. Okay.
Yep.
And she is host of the Efficiency Bee podcast and an expert at efficiency and productivity. And I'm excited to hear a little bit more about how she thinks about efficiency and money and her story there, and also what she does with her podcast and her work and all that too. So, Melissa, take us back. Give us a little bit of like the backstory. What brings you to where you are today?
Okay, let's see. I love this question. My very first job that I ever had was as a bank teller. I was 16 years old. I don't think they would let 16-year-olds be bank tellers anymore, but in the 90s, that was a thing. So I was a bank teller, and I learned from a very, very early age how money worked in large quantity, right? I saw the vault. I saw very rich people. I saw very poor people and everybody in between. I saw the rise of ATMs. I mean, when I first started working at the bank in 96, there was some ATMs, but no one really used it. It was really just to get cash out. You couldn't do anything else. There was no online banking. So I really got to see a lot of that take place. I saw the Paycheck Friday phenomenon continue every week. People would line up for an hour to cash their check and they'd take it all. I mean, I learned very young about that space. And then I went to college and I went to hotel restaurant management school. I thought I was going to own a bar, but it turns out I was 21 and I just liked to be in the bar. I didn't actually want to own one. So once I graduated, I quickly decided that that was not for me. And I was lucky enough to be working at a hotel at the time. And the financial controller said, "Would you like to try accounting?" And I was like, nope, not for me. But I did it. And in the first week, I knew that was my space. So I spent 17 years in hospitality finance. I started from entry level, did AP, payroll, income audit, up through director of finance. And then the last 8 years of my career, I helped centralize and standardize accounting practices for a global hotel company. So that was super fun and interesting and wild, because not only did I learn how all 50 states are different, I learned how every country is different. And then 18 months ago, I started a company called 2 Cents Consulting, and it's really around small business CFO and helping small businesses who can't afford big help to do it in fractions, right? So I can be an hour of a CFO for one company and 5 hours for another. And that spun again. And I recognized that a lot of my personal talent is in that efficiency, time and money space, not just for small businesses, but for individuals. And I'm writing a book. The book is called Efficiency Bitch, which is a silly story between my mom and I. But that led to the Efficiency Bee podcast. And that's like me with a bow on it, right?
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, so I can imagine throughout this arc of a story that how you've thought about money and efficiency has evolved over time. So take me back to 16-year-old Melissa. What are some of the things you kind of started learning about money at that point? And like, what was that mindset just kind of jumping into as, being a bank teller and seeing these big volumes of money all the time?
Yeah, I didn't understand how money worked at the time, right? And back then, minimum wage was like $4 an hour, and I was making $9 an hour. So at 16, my first job was more than double minimum wage. And all of my friends were working at Burger King or whatever. Now, I'm going to tell you my secret. My mom worked for Wells Fargo, and she helped me get that interview.
Yep.
Whether or not she helped me get the job is probably up for discussion, but nonetheless, I got hired. And I didn't know what I was doing. But at first, it made money seem fake, like Monopoly money. Like, I was so used to seeing large volumes of cash that it almost had no value to me. And then within the first year, I started watching the same people come in with non-sufficient fund fees, and they would spend hundreds of dollars, Amanda, a month on NSF fees, but they were living paycheck to paycheck, but they were wasting all this money. And I just couldn't understand why this was happening. And simultaneously, I was dating a young man. I was 16, 17 at the time, and his older sister had 2 kids. And she would get her paycheck every other week, and she'd come to the bank and she'd cash it, and she'd take every penny. And I'd go to her house, and she would go to Walmart or Costco or wherever and buy everything under the sun. And for like 4 days, she lived like she was rich. And then for the next 10, she was looking through the couch cushions for quarters to fill up a gas tank, right? And it was like I was getting both of these lessons at the exact same time. And it was shocking to me. I think I learned really quickly that I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to ever be digging through couch cushions looking for my gasoline in my car. And so that was a big eye-opener at 16, for sure.
Yeah. So I imagine you're still like living with your parents, right? You're still going to high school. You're not having to worry too much about money at that point. You're just kind of observing. But then you get to adulting and you're in your 20s, you're out on your own. Did those lessons stick with you? Did you have to learn any new ones? What happened then?
Some of them, I think they like went in the back of my mind. They didn't stay in the front. Because if I look back at it, I didn't do well my freshman year of school. Believe it or not, I'm an accountant who's failed accounting twice. And a lot of that was just, I didn't want to. I didn't want to do it. And so I didn't do well my freshman year of college. I partied a little too hard, had too much fun. Didn't see the financial consequence of what that freshman year of college cost my parents. So back to community college, and eventually decided I wanted to try university again. And this time I paid the bill. So this time I got the loan. I got my full-time job back at the bank. I was at the bank from sophomore year of high school to when I graduated college. So I moved again. I went back to university. I paid all those bills, and lo and behold, I was able to pay my tuition and pay my rent and still have time to play and all of the things. And my life just started to take this momentum of responsibility that I couldn't have seen coming. But it absolutely set me up for success as an adult. And I know for sure watching others at the bank so closely really played into my own psyche on how to manage money. One of the pitfalls that I ran into in college that I know, and I mentor college kids and I guest lecture on occasion at university, and I tell them all the time, stay away from credit cards. In university, they will shove credit card applications down your throat, right? And I got your credit is no good here letter in the mail. And I was working at the bank, and I thought, how can this be? How can I have bad credit? I don't have any credit. So that's when I got a secured credit card, and I started building my own credit. And today I'm happy to say I'm 40 years old and I still have perfect credit. But that lesson happened while I was in college, while I was working at the bank. And I really believe that that's a big way that you can build and keep wealth is to maintain that positive credit score.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I know there's a lot of like overlap between personal finance and business finance, right? Things like saving first, having a rainy day fund, things like that, like lots of crossover. Was there any like fresh insights you got when you started like actually managing the money or helping to manage the money for a major corporation?
Yeah, I mean, man, have I seen so many different pieces of it. From a corporate perspective, cash flow is a really big thing. And like, so I live in Arizona, and in Arizona, we are a very, very seasonal state. We have a lot of what we call snowbirds that come here from the northern part of the country and from Canada, and they make our business owners in Arizona a lot of money in October through April, and then May to September, it is a ghost town.
Mm-hmm.
And small business owners, if they don't know how to manage that cash, they may have an overall profitable year, but they may have no cash to pay their electric bill in June. And I've seen that so many times. I've seen companies, I've worked for companies where you print the checks to get it off your aging and you let them sit on your desk until someone calls.
Yep.
And I tell small business owners all the time, be the loudest squeaky wheel when it comes to your receivables, because a lot of businesses just print the checks and keep them right there. And the second you call, they'll put it in the mail. But if you don't call, you're going to sit in the back of the line until they have the cash to pay it.
Yep. Yep.
It's a big, the cash flow piece, man, that's it's a tricky one for owners of businesses. And, you know, particularly as like the COVID stuff has unfolded, when I started 2 Cents Consulting, we really took off because of the pandemic. We started helping people for free, like get their stuff in order so that they could go get the PPP loans and the EDIL loans. Otherwise, they weren't going to have the cash to get through it. And that was a big piece that I learned in corporate America for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to think of cash flow as like the lifeblood of our businesses. And if it's not flowing, if it gets blocked up or, you know, it's not coming in or it's not like flowing in the way that it should, that can be serious problems. Just like if our bodies have heart attacks, if our blood's not flowing the right way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and when you don't know how to manage that on a personal basis, you can't know how to manage it on a business basis, right? And vice versa.
Yeah.
So I see, and that's kind of where like I ended up having efficiency be for personal stuff. I mean, I'm a mom. I've got 3 kids. They're all very little. Built a business, had a corporate job. I do a lot of things, but I think the basis of why that all works for me is my sound education and money and time. And you know, someone once said time is money, and like I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, let's jump into that efficiency part, the thing we're supposed to be talking about. Like, first of all, like how would you define efficiency? What does that word mean to you?
Doing the right things, not all of the things. In fact, that's like our major tagline of our business is productivity is doing all of the things, and all of the things have to be done. Don't get me wrong. And efficiency is doing the right things. So one of the things that I encourage small business owners to do at every turn is to outsource whatever they're not good at and whatever isn't the right thing for them. Like, I don't like social media. It doesn't feel good for me. I'm not good at it. It's not like a feel good for me. So I outsourced it. For many people, the bookkeeping element of their business is that. So that's where I like to be called. You know, I have somebody who helps me with my website. I have somebody who edits my podcast. Yes, that stuff takes away from my bottom line, but it also allows me to only do the things that are right and not all, because I believe you can have it all. I just don't believe you can do it all.
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. And it's like efficiency is spending more and more time in your zone of genius. That's kind of what I hear you saying. So how does that now apply to money for businesses, personal, whichever way you want to go with it, or both?
Yeah, and it does go both, right? It's so mixed up. So just a little about me personally. I have a corporate job. I still keep it. My husband is a general manager of a golf course, so he has a full-time job. We have 3 kids. They're 6, 8, and 10. We have a puppy who's 4 months old. So we have a lot of things on our plate, on our day jobs, on our like responsibility of life. But I built a business on the side. I've got the podcast, and now we're looking at buying a franchise. And we're trying to figure out where we can put our money to make it make sense. You know, a couple of years ago, that was real estate. I'm not buying any more real estate right now. The market is insane and untrustworthy, in my opinion. So we're looking at, can we buy a franchise with a small brick and mortar place, because commercial retail is really inexpensive to lease right now. Labor is hit or miss, depends on where you live. But the opportunity of 2 executives building a business and selling it 5 years from now is relatively lucrative. So we look at those types of things on our personal scale as well as on our business scale. Did something really similar with a client of mine through COVID. He was forced to shut down through COVID in Texas. He didn't have the desire to continue his lease in that location. He found another location, which was a very similar rent, twice the size. He reopened with a restaurant twice the size, same rent, and now he's making double the money, right? And he taking advantage of those market changes is something that I think is really fun and enjoyable. I don't play the stock market myself. I outsourced that. I have a financial advisor who does that for me. But those type of strategic decisions on how to spend your time, how to spend your money is kind of what I love to do.
Yeah, I love that. So I talk a lot about efficiency and money too. I have what's called the X factor, and it's not X as like X, it's ECS, X that way. And the E is for efficiency, the C is for control, and the S is for safety. And when I think about efficiency, I'm also thinking about like waste management, like not making sure my money is safe from the waste of fees, taxes, right? Like that kind of stuff too. But I love the spin of thinking like, as my stage of life changes, as the world, the economy changes, I need to be changing what I do with my money, because different things are going to be more or less efficient.
Your comment about the fees hits home for me so much. It's one of the very first things I do for clients is I go through and show them all the money they're wasting on fees. Drives me crazy. I mean, some of them are inevitable. If you're in the business of retail, you're going to pay credit card fees. Like that's a given. But paying non-sufficient fund fees or late charge fees, just like throw money in the garbage.
Or even just money to have a bank account. Like there's plenty of banks out there that are not going to charge you a monthly fee to just have an account with them. Right. So I think we've talked about, or like we've emailed a little bit, that you're a fan of Profit First, right? Totally love Profit First too. And that's one of the things that they talk a lot about is, you can have all the different Profit First accounts without paying any bank fees for those accounts. You just have to ask, right, for them to be removed, or you have to move to a different bank that's not going to charge them, maybe a credit union. For example.
I like parts of Profit First. I struggle sometimes with the multiple bank accounts for some owners. So I have a couple clients who the Profit First concept of having multiple bank accounts ends up costing them money because they don't move money in time, and then they're paying NSF fees. And so I think it really just depends on the person. You got to know yourself. I'm fine with multiple bank accounts because I know when to move it. And it does teach cash flow, which I like. But you got to have a business owner who's diligent in it, who's going to pay attention to it.
That's one of the biggest complaints I've heard too, is that actually having those bank accounts feels inefficient, right? Like, wouldn't it be more efficient to just have one? I did find out recently that the credit union that I have all my main Profit First accounts with, I just needed to ask about overdraft protection, because if I do have non-sufficient fund fees and I can change the kind of overdraft protection I have to
Yeah.
use the savings account I have with that credit union, which is my profit account, which is always going to have money there because I'm only taking 50% every quarter, to that they'll just transfer it over to cover the remaining
Yeah.
balance. And I needed to ask about that, and it was there the whole
Yeah,
time.
you're absolutely right. And there's so many automations you can make now with moving money around. But if you're not diligent about doing that, and I have found a lot of business owners just don't want to deal with it.
Right. Yeah.
And then it ends up costing them time or money later. But if you set it up right, and it's one of the things I teach the most is like, find the extra hour today that will save you 15 minutes every day forever.
Yes.
And sometimes just doing that, like, I don't want to sit down and set up bank automations either, but I also don't want to pay NSF fees, and I don't want to do it every day forever. So setting up those little automations. I found this thing recently just as a podcaster, and I don't know if you do these things, but I'm using Calendly to set up all my interviews because my podcast is booked out for a year.
Yeah.
And then I got to set up reminder emails and set the links out and all these things. And it took me a good like 2 hours to go in and program it and edit the templates but now I don't think about it. Right. Now it sends somebody a reminder a month before, the week before, the day before, and away we go, right?
Yep. Yep.
And I think about that in a lot of things that I do. I'm very system driven, and being able to kind of manage through some of that is what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. Give me another example related to money besides like auto transfers. Can you think of anything?
And ways to automate things?
Yeah, or just to be more efficient, to spend the 1 hour that will save you 15 minutes every day or every week.
Oh, let's see. I like buying things in bulk ahead of time if my cash flow can afford it.
Yeah.
And I do that both like at Costco or Sam Club. Like my kids go through certain things in ridiculous quantities, so I will buy it in ridiculous quantities, or things that freeze. Not toilet paper, because that's bad.
Yeah, right. You don't do that anymore.
But I do the same in my business, right? Like you'll get software that'll say it's $10 a month or it's $50 for the year. Well, I'm going to buy $50 for the year if I know I'm going to use it, but it's also a waste of money if I'm not sure.
Right.
So I'm careful about those types of things. I do good amount of research. I'll spend an hour researching a software before I buy it. I mean, man, it's like land of all the shiny objects. If you start looking online,
right,
there's so many softwares and things that you can buy to make your life easier. And there always are more coming out, but I try to spend a good amount of time trying to figure those things out in their entirety. I know so many people who use Calendly, which I mentioned before, but they don't use it properly, or they don't use it completely, I should say. And then it's not all that great for them.
Right. Right.
So really understanding what you buy and using its entirety. I know a lot of small business owners who use QuickBooks Online, but then they hire ADP or Paychecks to do their payroll. I'm like, but why?
Right.
Why not just have QuickBooks do it? It saves you all that other stuff, right?
Yeah. And I love that idea. Like our podcast producer, we pay them in December every year for the whole year because we know we're going to podcast more, and we save 2 months, right? They give us 2 months free when we pay in advance that way. And it just helps them actually. Now they get this big chunk that they get to go be efficient with in terms of how they're deploying and when they're deploying it. And I love thinking through like win-wins like that too with vendors and people. So thanks for bringing that up. That's one of the things I was thinking about too.
It's a tricky one though, right? Because it's like, only if you have the cash can you take advantage of that.
Right.
And it is one of those cycles of like the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, because the poor can't do that. And so it's, how do you make that shift? How do you get that pivot so that you have that initial windfall where you can make those types of smart decisions? And as a small business owner, when you have no money coming in, how do you have the money to spend it going out in these things? And so that's where, like, for me, I think having a CFO or a director of finance or somebody who can weigh through those options with you and give you an opinion is really beneficial to most small businesses.
Yeah. So actually, that's exactly where I wanted to go next is, what does it look like to be a a fractional CFO for a business? What kind of things are you talking about? What is that? Yeah. What does that
All
look
the
like?
things. So we talk about, gosh, I help small businesses like register their company as an LLC. I help them make the decision if they need to be an S corp. I help them set up their chart of accounts. That's like one of the biggest things I see in small businesses is they just take like the standard chart of accounts and whatever accounting software they chose. And it's like, no, you want to be able to see your revenue in the way you want to see it, see your expenses in the way it means something to you. You don't just want to have sales. Like, I want to know that that's breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm a restaurant, I want to know exactly what's food cost and what's beverage cost, so I can start to squeeze my margins, my cost of sales in different places. For some of my more advanced clients who've been around in business longer, it's forecasting and budgeting and cash flow and make or buy decisions. It's certainly not one size fits all, which is really what's cool. People always ask me, like, what's your niche market? Like, what do you hone in on? I give examples a lot in the restaurant world because most people can relate to at least the consumer side of that. But it's everything. And that's what's been so fun for me is 20 years in hospitality, and hotels are little cities. They have all the departments that you could possibly imagine. I was at a luxury chain, so I was fortunate enough to be in full service luxury brand hotels that literally have every type of business you can imagine.
Yeah.
And have been able to work through a lot of that.
Cool. Love it. Awesome. Anything else you wanted to make sure and share about efficiency and money or about what you do?
I think the secret sauce is really one step at a time. I tell people, take what hits your desk today and make it better. And then you don't have to touch it again. And then tomorrow, whatever hits your desk, because I think people sometimes they start making lists of all the things they want to fix, and it's super overwhelming. It's like, if you wanted to organize all the closets in your house, you can't do it all in one day. You can't think about them all because the linen closet is different than the medicine cabinet is different than the kids' playroom. So you do what hits you today. You spend the hour, and I usually tell people to keep it to an hour because otherwise, your head explodes. Take that 1 hour a day to make something more efficient. And then you're going to look back in a year and be like, whoa, all my systems have become so much more efficient. And now I have time to play with my kids or read a book or, start another company.
Yeah.
I think that's like secret sauce.
Cool. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Please check out the Efficiency Bee podcast and 2 Cents Consulting. We've got links to them in the description of this video. And hopefully you'll hear me on Melissa's podcast sometime soon too.
Yes, indeed. I would love to have you. Awesome.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.